April the 22nd, 2025. Guys, you're looking in what I call the back door of some of the computer interfaces over on the Franco-Swiss border, underground in a 17-mile loop called Cern. On the left is beam 1, on the right is beam 2. You got a 17-mile underground tunnel that a lot of people think it was there to shield the electromagnetic field that it creates, which is 100,000 times more powerful than the one needed for our planet to keep the balance, the magnetic balance. Anyway, this is live. Notice your timestamp right here. This is universal time there again, right there on the border of France and Switzerland. Now, what you're looking at, beam 1, they're adjusting it. They're adjusting beam 2 also. And if you look at this line, it's the cross section of where the beam is now. Same thing on the bottom. This is, we would call it here in the south, and anywhere I guess you have artillery, windage and elevation. This would be your windage, and this would be your elevation in your sight. What you're trying to do is get it set up. There's one of my huskies back there trying to get some attention. I'm just going to let him bark for a moment. And what they want to do is make both of these collide. That's where they get the explosions, the collisions, the particle separations, and the energy that they need to do what we have been talking about, and that is interfere with the message from our Father in heaven by creating frequencies that are sub-frequencies or lower frequencies to interfere with the higher frequencies that are starting to come from our sun. By the way, the reason I'm looking at this right now is because my ears are buzzing so bad and ringing. The noise is so bad in them, and the dizziness is intense. We have a very high solar wind speed. I checked it also, but I wanted to look here because to me this is, I guess because I'm physically involved, an experiment. And with your help in the comments, we can really narrow it down, and by doing that, we can help a lot of people. Now, we've looked through the comments of the last few videos. Excellent, guys, excellent. Anyway, they have not achieved the windage and elevation. This will move as all of this changes to get a collision. What they're doing, though, is ramping up. Now, I mentioned in a video that CERN has new technology that they haven't had before the ramping up here just a few weeks ago. But they do now. And what that has to do with is a coating. And so I think it's through the injection plates, part of that. I don't know exactly how it works, but they've got a new coating that keeps the heat down as they're running this high energy, guys. Unbelievably high energy. Imagine 17-mile big loop like a magnetic coal. And it's about 400 feet, I think, underground. And that's a task within itself. Think about that. But it is emitting into our atmosphere and throughout our planet frequencies. And the magnetic energy, again, of what we're seeing is 100,000 times more powerful than what's created by the magma spinning in the core of our planet. God doesn't need that much energy because he has such a perfect design and balance. He could use all the energy you wanted, though. But CERN is a different thing. They cannot even comprehend exactly what God is doing, our Father in heaven. And they have to use so much more power to try to delay the frequencies that are incoming. And I've got an excellent video, I think, guys. I'm going to get this one out, if I can just get everything to calm down a moment. I've already got it all laid out in a Canva PDF. I would just have to basically read through it. But it's kind of tough right now. Anyway, I want to show you a little bit more about CERN. But this is moving. Notice 49:57. That is 50 minutes after midnight there. It is 5:50 here. And so that tells you they're about 6 hours ahead of us. Now there's about 20 or more different screens there at Cern that give you different information. What this one is called the cryogenics, and that it's exactly what it means, very cold. Here is a temperature line with 2 degrees Kelvin right there, see that? And anything above that, they have to shut down each of these sections, CM, ITR1, CS, IRT1, and so on. They will turn red. They have to shut everything down if just one does. And we saw it all the time as they were ramping up over all the past years. But right now with that new coating, they're very easily, I'm not saying how long it will happen, but it was happening the other night when we were looking at it on Pastor Paul's show when I called in. And it was just this smooth. And even if they hadn't shut down a section, you would still see some variances. And what you see here is these lines are all combined. Each one of these sectors has a line here. If one of them overheats, you'll see all kind of different color graph lines because they start shutting them down and the temperature start rising above this line. By the way, this is the temperature of outer space, which has everything to do with infrared, the ability to cloak a planet, a star, or a spaceship. That's a different video. But again, this is very concerning to me because they're very easily maintaining temperature. That was always a main problem. But again, they came up with a new coating, and it's allowing them to increase power, increase the time that they're running, and I've already seen them go above 13.5 tera electron volts, which is where they usually peak out, and that's where they, by the end of the season, will have reached peak luminosity. Notice they use that light terminology. By the way, the statue at Cern of Shiva has a dual meaning, and it can dance in creation, and it can dance in destruction. And it was put there by, there's a lot of scientists from India that understand some of the ancient gods and their technology, and we've all talked about the wars and the UFOs in the past, in ancient history, the Vimanas, the UFOs all over the world. Anyway, that technology is what we're dealing with, and right now, and of course it had to be 2025 when they started to perfect and get new technology that would keep this section cool. Without that happening, nothing else happens. Again, this is live. Your timestamp is here. Now, this is what is called the LHC, or Large Hadron Collider Operation page. Timestamp right here. Again, we are live. Most of you know that when you see the blue beam, which is beam 1 on the left, beam 2 is the red line. When they collide and when they're passing through, they create energy. The black line indicates that amount of energy. What we've seen over all the years is this thing stop at about 6.5 or so. I'm getting up a little closer to 7. 7, if you had 7,000, that's per beam. So you would be at 14,000 tera electron volts. But again, what we've seen with them reaching peak luminosity over the years is the 13.5 tera electron volts, or the way, let me see, the way they read it, which is the same. 7,000 giga electron volts is the same thing as 7 tera electron volts. You see what I mean? Now over here, on this side, you're seeing Atlas. That's the big machine. Then you're seeing the CMS in black. Then you're seeing Alice here in the pink and the LHCb in red. Right now over here, they are not running at full power. As a matter of fact, the beams are not colliding. You just saw that, right? But what is happening, this power line needs to stay steady. And when it's really powerful, all three will rise together and stay in a steady line. And again, they're early into the season. They're watching different instruments that we do not see. And they have instrumentation right now that they're looking at the shape, the contour, the strength of our shields. I know because I've watched it too many times when they would peak here and the shields would collapse all the way to the satellite band. They've hidden most of that technology from the public. But it was too late. We've already seen it. I wish they still had that particular instrument up, guys, because many of you remember when we see these peaks and it would show the magnetopause circling and the satellite circling, and everything collapsed. And so they are definitely affecting the magnetosphere, our shields, our magnetics, our everything on the planet. The frequencies are being dumbed down to our bodies. Now, I don't know how it would be accomplished, but there's a lot of colliders around the planet. You have one over in the Middle East called Sesame, but they're all over. You have one in Chicago. They were going to build a huge one in Texas, and I think it got shut down several years ago. But there's a lot of them. But now Cern may be the biggest. I'm not sure. We don't have all the information, and I don't think they're really telling us how many of these they are. But you would want one to control both poles, if you think about it. Now, Cern is located up in, again, the Franco-Swiss border, which is in very high up into the northern hemisphere. And you've got a lot of ground currents from the magnetics running through the planet that run your compass. So that energy, I think, that's being generated by the currents coming in from our sun, that's generated from our sun coming into our magnetic fields, that is also being used because I think they're tapping into those ground currents. Remember, I showed you the ones across the U.S. and Canada? Well, that happens all over the planet. And exactly where Cern is one of the major ground lines where the ground currents move through. So at 400 feet deep, they say they're shielding their energy. I think they're just taking advantage of the ground current because their energy is apparent when you collapse our shields and we watch it live. Let's take a look back now at the beam collision, again, what I call the windage and elevation. Still not there, and I think they ease it. You just saw this one jump a little bit. And what's happening, guys, as simple as I can explain it, because I'm kind of simple anyway, is these tunnels are, again, 17-mile loop. They're full of magnets. And so as that voltage is going through those magnets, they got to keep them cool. That's the cryogenic section, right? But if you adjust it left and right, or it adjusts itself by heating up a little section warmer than the other, you'll see that movement. But right now, more than likely, they're waiting for the right moment, right energy levels in both the blue and red lines that we just looked at. When all of that's peaking, they're going to do their best to move this into perfect center with those magnets. It's like controlling anything in a tunnel with magnets around it. You push more energy to the right, like an electric train or anything like that. You can push it forward or backward by the reversing the magnetic fields. Same thing with this, except it's much more sophisticated. And so they're looking at two colliding beams, beam one in the blue, beam two in the red, and my huskies in there they're fed and they're frisky. And they're trying to get each other to play with them right now. But that's life with huskies. I wouldn't trade them for anything in the world. Now let's switch gears slightly and look at the solar wind coming in on the Discover satellite. We have a very good wall of change here. This is going over the last, from April 16th, guys, up until now. So here we're dealing still with very high solar wind, and I think that has a lot to do with the dizziness that I'm feeling right now, and maybe that's why the huskies are fussing so much in there. But up here, this is an important part. Notice on the 21st yesterday, we had an opening in the shields when you see the separation between these two magnetic signatures. Here, that's an opening. Now, as it dips slightly right there, we're slightly below it, and that is technically an opening. It gets more severe. If you look back over here, you see a series of numbers. When you're breaking below this 10, getting close to 20, like here, and then a few days ago, 9 hours of that. So we're seeing a slight opening, but it's hard to imagine something not opening, guys, when you have this type of solar wind. It is coming down some. We are at 579 still. We're at over would say 1.3.5 or 1.4 million miles per hour. But look right here. This is telling us the angle is changing very quickly, going from blue to pink very quickly on the graph here, and very wide at the angle the solar wind is hitting us. Remember the coronal hole? You could put 1,000 of our planets in that. Remember I said it would take 119 of them. It's scaled to just cross the Earth-facing side of the sun, but if you put them all into that, imagine that. So you got solar wind streaming from a large location. Some sections are hotter, some are a little cooler maybe. Solar wind may be a little different. But if you look at from the equator, where the coronal hole gets very wide, we'll go ahead and take a look at that. Then you'll see that there is many angles that are coming at us. And when you see this angle change of the approaching solar wind, that's when it's really hard for it not to open up right there. So we're seeing a lot of angle change throughout the day, and it's continuing now. But it's trying to hold together. Maybe the angles are good, and we hope it slows down, because I can definitely tell it now. Are your ears ringing? Let me know. And this is what we're looking at right now. The last image is coming in at 48. I say this would be 12 minutes or so ago, and it's a very large area. Now, this is another slight opening, but this section here is in the southern hemisphere, and so is the Earth's angle with the sun. We are south of the sun's equator. So this is going to turn to the right, to the east limb, and what's going to happen is that even though the solar wind would be cut off, at the point it gets around to an angle that it's not directly facing us. And it's still going to take a day or two, because I've mentioned it in the video this morning, that once you shut that dam off during a flood, everything's flooding out. You shut the dam off, it cuts it off there. It takes a couple of days for everything to get downstream in most cases. Same thing here. So if this is affecting you, be aware of that. Now, this is the last images of a combination of 3 cameras, and when you overlay those 3 filters into one computer image, it gives you great detail. You'll notice right here at the bottom in the 3 different colors, the 211 is the red image you see of the sun, the 193 is the green, and then in the purple images is the 171. There's 12 different cameras, and it gives you this very excellent contrast. You can see here, this is one of the CH means coronal hole, black hole sun, coronal hole here, and they're very large, but compared to the one here, it's much larger. It doesn't look like it on the first image that we saw. That's why I wanted to come to this particular camera, because it filters out more, and it even shows you that there's a sunspot right in the northwestern section of this coronal hole. And that's still, look at all the arcing loops in it right there. So we've got that. We've got a whole entire group of sunspots coming around towards us. The white lines they indicate filaments that could pop and release, and I've seen those things do more damage than just a solar flare, because they have so much protons in this section. You see how it's very thick here? Well, that when it throws out, that's how dense the energy coming towards our planet is. But I wanted to come in and talk about this, and the fact that Cern is running right now, and it looks like they're just idling, very low gear. And the concern to me is how well controlled the cryogenics are being able to keep it below 2K that easily. Usually when you see the lines jump and the power indicators move, one of those sections has turned from green to red. That's not happening. They're playing with the new technology. And the second part of the video talking about the sun and our DNA is one that I have laid out, and I think it's very good. If I can kind of get it together after this one and feel like going into detail, because it is detailed, but it's laid out, then I'll do it. If not, it'll have to be in the morning, guys. But right now, let me know if you're feeling these effects. Now let's go from just the diagram on the solar wind speed, which is called your velocity, and look at it, how the satellites are seeing it and how it's transferred into a computer image that we can understand. What you're seeing, and many of you have before, is the Earth is in the center of this gray disk, and it's in the smaller circle. Half of it's white, half of it's black. The white side is white because that's the direction the sun is. You can see the energy also coming in from that side. Check that out. This coloration in red and orange tells you it's very strong. Sometimes it can be very light blue and all, but we are in a lot of energy right now. Again, we're at over 1 million miles per hour. And you can see the burnout. This is this plasma burnout. This is basically our magnetopause here. Again, you can see the energy coming in as it plays through and plays back. This is also up to the current time. Notice the 4th, the 22nd right there, going up to in the last frames will be the last ones that are available to us. Very interesting to watch. It is under such pressure that it's not changing that much, but you can tell the difference. If you look at the bottom, what we're doing is, guys, I'm not going to be here forever, and I think about that, and I know there's a lot of people that are very interested in this, and I think God puts that interest in their heart because he needs people that are interested in so many different things, right? And he wants those people to help and teach. He wants his people to know what's going on. So if I take a little time, it's a little more boring sometimes. It's because I'm thinking about the people that do have that heart, or even, and which is a lot of people. But I also want you to know as much as I can show you. At the bottom of this is a group of numbers. This is called the standoff point, and that's where the normal magnetopause is. And that would be at 12 right there, okay? So when you see it push back to 10, and I've seen it back to 1, 2, 3, then that's how intense the pressure coming from the sun, and you can see it right now hitting it. Those different waves of energy, see that? Well, the Earth has, it's not almost, it is a living organism. When I say by that is we have a plasma belt. You've heard of our Van Allen belt, which is radiation. There's another belt called the plasma belt. And it has it's like, again, a living organism, and it's sitting right in this area. And when it senses a high energy coming from the sun, it will throw plasma out in front of the Earth. It's called, you can look it up, the plasma belt. It senses it, throws out everything almost like an airbag going off before a wreck. It will eventually, if the solar stream's moving fast enough and continuously enough, it will strip a lot of that plasma back and weaken it. Then as soon as it lets up, the plasma will start gathering again and thickening that plasma belt. Perfect creation by our Father in heaven. You can see this plasma in the burn-offs here. And behind it, look back here. This is a north-south cut, a dawn-to-dusk cut. Now, the other thing we look at is density. Okay, that's how thick the proton cloud is. And that's what this model represents. Notice right there, density, centimeters cubed. Again, live up to the last frame. This is coming out of Space Weather Prediction Center, which is the University of Michigan, by the way. We do have colleges doing good things. A couple of things you can notice here. This is basically our plasma belt, our plasmasphere here. And it's got so much density in it that it's hitting it's blocking everything and throwing the thickest part that would be devastating to our planet back behind us, see, in both the north-south and the left-right cut. Another thing that is interesting here, and I'm going to break it down, is you can see how everything's changing. See the waves, the darker the blue, the more intensity is. But look how much it's having to burn off. In this section here would be where your auroras were if you were looking at the Earth. But this is much further out. This is a part of that plasma burn-off. Now, over here, this is very interesting, and I'm going to do a close-up of it so that we can talk about it. Now, this would be the view if you were off to the left or right side of the Earth, and it was facing the sun again, which is coming from the left side of our image. What do you notice? You notice this tilt. It's not straight. This angle of impact. I've said that we're in this southern hemisphere, the sun's ecliptic, right? So the energy is going to be hitting us. If it were straight on, this would be straight. But it's above us, so it's bending it down. And it's summertime. So what does that tell you about the angle of energy during the summer when the northern section of our planet is tilted towards the sun? The energy burn off. Look at that. And that's just telling you that tilt that I always talk about. Now, this is what's called the pressure cut. Again, live, up to the last frame. And you can see the sun energy is coming from the left across towards the right. Look at the burn off of plasma behind us. Again, it's a giant model of the auroras, basically, but this is much further behind the planet. It's not right up in our atmosphere. It's way behind us, but that's telling you how much energy we're burning off right now. Look at that. See more coming in as the yellows change. And again, that I said the standoff line would, if it was just calm, like a 350 kilometer per second solar wind, this would be staying around 12. But it's bouncing back and forth, and when it gets a little redder, you'll see that what happens when it compresses our shields like that, guys. Pressure goes on the tectonic plates. This is what I've talked about since I watched the X-flare strike Japan that afternoon and caused the tsunami that messed up Fukushima. Anyway, this energy, and it can get stronger than this, and we're going to start watching the solar images and data, guys, a lot closer because it's starting to increase. There's a reason for it. We've got to be ready both physically and I'm going to say spiritually too for the changes. But again, the parable of tares, guys, never forget, it's talking about a garden was planted, it was good seed. Along comes the devil, plants his seed. You know who that is. That's the Kenites. That's Cain and his bunch. Started with Cain down to today, that we have many million of them here on the planet. And you know a lot of them. You see them on the news quite a bit. Anyway, the Kenites were the tares. So the servant said, Father, you didn't plant all those tares, but the wheat's good, but the tares they're basically polluting them. You couldn't cut them all together. It would poison the wheat. And God told him, you can't do that. If you tear those tares up, it's going to be so devastating to the soil, to the garden, that it will kill the wheat also. In other words, if he were to allow the angels to destroy the Kenites when they were recognized, he would have had to destroy the planet then. Eventually, that happened a few times. A couple floods, ice ages, possibly some heat factors back in the day. So he said, no, you can't do it. He said, but when the reaping begins, first harvest the tares, tie them, put them in bundles for my fire. He said, but the wheat, gather it and put it in my barn. You see what I mean? And when the tares are gathered, is where a lot of it is going to go down. And he's talking about tearing up the garden, right? In order for that to happen, that's coming on the planet. Just be prepared for it. Now, what we're looking at as I'm running my mouth, I'm going back to what's called the density plane. I forgot to mention something. This is our magnetosphere. I've got it zoomed in as close as I can get it. I hope it is not too distorted because of that. You see these blue lines that are cutting in from the main plasma blocking that our shields are doing? See these little blue lines? They're called cusp. And those are cracks. And what is happening is energy from this proton density edge of our shields is pouring into our lower atmosphere here. Again, they're called CUSP, cusp, and the greater the energy, the wider these occur. Also, they occur a lot when Cern is running at high energy. So you think you've got a full shield, but if you look very close, and again, this is all, you can look up the terminology and look at the effects. But the bluer these get, the more energy is pulling in. The bluer they get, you'll also see the increase in the burn off in the back. It's amazing, guys. The creation is beyond explaining that our Father has. But what did he say? He said, what was it? Is the glory of God to hide such a matter in the honor of kings, to search it out. I may have that backwards. From the highest heights and the deepest depths. And that is the Watchman's Creed. Is the glory of God to hide in the honor of kings, to try to search it out. We'll say that. And why? Because what is God telling you? He's trying to explain things that are going on, and he wants you to learn and listen. And we got frequencies increasing, guys. And I don't know how much time is going to be before people really start in anguish. I think we're already seeing it, of this DNA. It's not really, it's a change back. If you ask me, it was pretty good to start with, and it's been manipulated since the garden, and still is with the vaccinations. But we're watching this, guys. You watch it. Enjoy this video. I may just need to get some rest tonight. Probably some of you guys my age do too. But I'm trying to really advance this information to the people that are listening. Believe it or not, that's my goal, because I'd like to see all of us make it, wouldn't you? And I'm not saying I'm going to make it, but if you guys make it, keep an eye out for me. Keep a hand down there or drop a rope. I may just need a little help. You never know, because, guys, I'm never going to say that I'm going to make it into heaven, because I'm not the judge. That judge has not opened those books yet. And he's the only one qualified to open them. Remember, when the books are open, everyone was kind of sad because no one was qualified to open them. And then there stepped up Jesus Christ, and he opened those books. That's when judgment comes, and that's, guys, a lot of people say you're going to be judged, when you die, or you're going to go to heaven or hell then. I don't know where you go, but I know that you're not judged until after the 1,000-year millennium. Read it very carefully. 1,000 years of peace with teachings, and Satan's loose for a short time. Then he's cast, after he's loosed, and the people that are kind of on the fence, a little wishy-washy, that made it as far as the millennium. You haven't made it. If you make it that far, guys, you still haven't made it all the way. Why would judgment be at the end of it? Think about that. So everybody needs to clean their act up, but what's happening is God is doing everything he can to help us. Changes are painful. Believe me, I know it. But again, going back to the wheat and the tares and the two things coming, one is a technology that has come here before. And a lot of that technology was handed down, has led to nuclear wars, led to the technology we're seeing in other ways, Cern and other things we don't know about. Trump has just said last week, wasn't it, that the military can now warp time and space. Times are changing, and that you think about why they wanted the Space Force so much, why Greenland is so important. It has a lot of underground places there that could be protected. And of course, it's an easy watch for any incoming from Russia or anywhere else in Europe. But we're just going to have to wait and see about that. Guys, thank you for coming and watching this. It's so much information. When you get my age, you kind of bog down when you try to put too many things together. A few years ago, it wasn't so bad. But I try to make it quality either way. And I hope and pray that it's clicking. Another thing before I go. we should all say a prayer about the instruments of the controllers. Remember, that was the terminology I used in the video last night about Cern. And it was terminology that was in some of the reports. I didn't create that terminology. But anyway, there's a battle. The battle on keeping the frequencies low, and a battle of someone arriving before full enlightenment. And what I'm saying by that is the moment Christ sets his foot back down, and that begins the day of the Lord. A day with the Lord is 1,000 years. So when people look back at time and the dates of the floods, and on the first day this was created, and second day, each day was 1,000 years. But that's still a very minute dot in the life of our planet. It's millions of years old, and it's proven. That's not an argument. One day, I think when in our spiritual bodies and our spiritual minds, we're all going to learn a lot. And that's wonderful. Knowledge is what our Father wants us to have. But whatever's coming, they're going to if they keep that frequency low, they keep us dumb enough, they think, to believe that imitation of Christ, anti means instead of Christ. This instead of Christ is not like an anti, it is a mimic. A mimic has to, as far as using the Christian Bible, would have to mimic everything. The second coming. Would there be fake witnesses? In other words, the witnesses are here, they get killed. Christ sets his foot down on the Mount of Olives right after 3 days. They rise up, and all hell breaks loose. Will that be mimicked also? It won't be the one that Christ is going to do, but it would maybe look like it. And if they're keeping the frequencies low, and what that does is you feel bad. You don't want to study. Your mind is not working at that level because of the dumbing down of not only chemicals, but the DNA. And God's trying to correct that and erase it. And the question does become, how do you handle it? And I think about it because I'm starting to really feel it a lot. And what I've decided to do, as long as I can, is to accept it and deal with it. I mean, you have to stop, you have to lay down, and things like that. But if we're correct, if I'm correct about this, and I think I am, a lot of you understand what I'm talking about, then that's part of the change. And then by accepting it, I was going through this last night, woke up, ears ringing, everything dizzy, like I'd taken something so strong, like it was in the hospital or something. And crazy. But thinking that, deal with it. Like you have to deal with pain sometimes. Deal with that in the sense that you're not just fighting pain, but you're accepting that change. Now that's important if we're correct in what we're talking about, and I feel like we are. And again, if your DNA's changing, it's changing everything in your body, but it's according to the information, going back to where it needs to be. It's a blessing, and guys, God is so good, our Father in heaven is so good, that if we're correct, he's giving us tremendous amounts of information here in these days and times. He knows we're trying. That is his honor. That is his glory. It is our honor to search these matters out. It's a heads up, guys. Be safe. Watch for updates.